introduce yourself and
Yeah.
what you do real quickly?
Yes, absolutely. Melanie Williams. I'm the president and founder of Pursuit 3416. We call ourselves that because we are pursuing Ezekiel 3416, which I'll say it and it'll make total sense to you. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. So that's just our anthem. So we give educational, we're nonprofit, we give educational 1 hour presentations that talk about sexual exploitation in your neighborhood.
Wow. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
no problem.
doing this ministry. Number one, this is so big. I mean, the things that you've heard have probably traumatized you, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, but thank you so much for doing this
Mhm.
ministry, for bringing awareness to this subject, and
Yeah,
for trying to save children. And
yeah,
then thank you so
absolutely.
much for spending this time interviewing with me. I so appreciate it. Um,
Absolutely.
so in this project, we're talking about child abuse going into trafficking and human trafficking.
Okay.
And we are researching into repeated victimization.
Okay.
So looking into instances where children were abused and then they fell into trafficking as
Mhm.
teenagers, as young adults, kind of that
Mhm.
spirit of hurt that just repeated
Yeah.
itself in the victim spirit they partnered with and that they
Yeah.
were attacked with, and just that repeated victimization.
Mhm.
Um, so let's kind of move on to some questions.
Yeah.
Um, are there common signs that you see in children who are possibly in danger of trafficking?
So yes, it's changed a lot as of recent. So just one caveat, I kind of mentioned to you previously. I'm going to answer most of the questions relating to the common neighborhood, the
Mhm.
in America, like St. Charles County, St. Louis County. And honestly, those two counties kind of represent all the neighborhoods in those counties are very similar to many neighborhoods throughout America.
Yeah.
So all my answers are going to be based off of that and America. I'm not going to speak beyond America. And I'll kind of explain more as I go.
Yes.
But recently, the main danger is every kid that has a screen is in danger. It used to be in the past that it was vulnerable kids or foster kids or runaways, um, kids with one parent homes and whatnot. But that's not the case. It is literally every kid with a screen, and that can be a video game screen that has a chat system. It can be a phone.
Mhm.
It can be your computer. It's any ability where a predator can communicate with you. So to me, any kid with a screen is the most danger that we're having now. Um, and I would say the most common screens that have danger, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, and Discord are
Mm,
the
yeah.
top four kind of apps. And then video game chats would come in equal to that. And then after that is any platform that you can communicate with somebody. To me, that's number one that I've seen the most sexual exploitation that includes sex trafficking. And then after that is friends, trafficking friends, and then familial trafficking would be kind of the top three in our common neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of the first time I've ever heard an adult say the word Discord. Talking
Okay.
about apps. So that's
Yeah.
like, I'm like, oh yeah, you are plugged in, because I've
Yeah.
even like done research and seen stuff where there will be adults pretending to be children, and it is a gross
Oh,
relationship there. Um,
predators love Discord.
yeah,
Love
that's
it. Mhm.
yeah, it's crazy. I'm
It's
not gonna lie,
scary.
it just kind of shocked me. I was like, oh my gosh, I've not heard that word in a while.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
big one. It's a big
it
one. I'll
is.
tell you some stories
Oh, I would
that are
love to hear.
attached to Discord. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Um, how,
Do you want me to share a couple with you
yes,
right
yes,
now or go
please.
on? Okay. So let's see. I made some notes. We'll look at them real quick. Okay, we have a boy from a local church in O'Fallon, Missouri, that he was groomed by three different people. Um, Two were men, two different men on the East Coast and on the West Coast that kind of took advantage of saying he kind of had shared he had a mom that was really religious, and so they took that and they ran with it
Mm.
and were like, oh, we can save you from your controlling religious mom and you need freedom, and just coerced and manipulated him, lied to him, offered to bring him to them, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. Thankfully, parents found out and it was squashed before he literally flew away to go see them. They
Wow.
met him. Yeah, he met both of them on Instagram DMs. Okay. The third incident that he had was a boy from a Fort Zumwalt high school. I won't say which one, but a Fort Zumwalt high school, a boy from one of those schools he started talking to on Discord. They were chatting. This young man was kind of confused about his sexual preference. And
Mm.
so the boy from the Fort Zumwalt High School he preyed on that. He took that and he ran and just did all his best to convince him that he was a certain way when he wasn't quite sure. And then he convinced him that they needed to meet up. Thank God, again, the parent found out and the meeting never happened, but she did find out that this boy from a Fort Zumwalt high school had already sex trafficked numerous peers,
Oh,
talking to them on Discord, and he'd already sex trafficked them. So that's a local example of Discord. A Texas example, I have loads of local examples, but
I'm sure.
um, this is a really common tactic that predators use. 34-year-old man met a 13-year-old girl on a video game chat, and he said, "Hey, can we take this conversation over to Discord?" That's a major red flag. When I'm doing presentations to youth, I always tell them, anytime somebody tries to get you to go from one platform to the next, there's only ill intentions involved.
Hmm.
And so she agreed, and they continued talking on Discord for many months. He groomed her on Discord, convinced her that can he pick her up? He did. He drove her 4 states away. He kept her in his shed. She was his sex slave for many months, and eventually he was found out and charged with human trafficking,
Oh, wow.
all from video game chat and Discord.
Wow.
So I can go on. I know we don't have the time, but I can tell you story after story after story of DM meets and Discord meets turning into sex trafficking.
That is insane.
Yeah.
I know that it's always been like I grew up, I'm Generation Z. I
Yeah.
had the big presentation in my gymnasium when I was in elementary school. Don't talk to strangers online.
Yeah.
But the shift with 2020 was no, do. That's the only way to reach out with people.
Right.
That's like you hear so many stories of people like making their lifelong best friends, meeting their
Yeah.
spouses. And I think
Mhm.
that kind of lures people into a false sense of security of, oh no, that grooming doesn't happen, the trafficking doesn't happen, stranger danger
Mhm.
is not real, everyone's online. Like it feels honestly like we're all digital nomads, we're
Mhm.
digital neighbors. There's
Mhm.
not really a stranger anymore. At least I feel like it's
Correct.
in the young mind. Um,
I'm going to give you a Gen Z stat right now. Okay. So in 2023, Snapchat reported that 65% of Gen Z teens and young adults, they were hacked and explicit imagery was stolen off of their property, which means that 65% of Gen Z teens on Snapchat had nudes. Having a nude as a minor is a felony.
yeah.
So even if you're 15 years old and you've taken a nude of yourself, that is a felony because that is CSAM, that's child sexual abuse material, formerly known as child porn. So Snapchat came out with that stat. 65% of Gen Z teens and young adults had sexual imagery taken off, hacked from their phones.
That is that is insane.
It
Because
is insane because, yeah.
I've grown up hearing, my parents are in ministry, so I've heard
Yes.
more specific instances than I'm sure other people have.
Hmm.
But I mean, I grew up hearing instances of a girl took a nude, she was 16 years old.
Hmm.
Um, it got passed around.
Hmm.
Whenever they went to the police, they're like, "Well, we if you want to continue with this, we will charge her with possession of child pornography." It's like, "Whoa, wait, what?"
Hmm.
So I've heard of those instances. I don't know if everybody has that taking a photo of yourself is a felony.
Right. That's a
Um,
big one that we uh we dig into that in our presentations. Not very many organizations like myself do, but the difference is that I worked with sex trafficked teenagers survivors for 9 years,
Mhm.
so I bring a more intimate experience to
Yeah,
my presentation. So yeah.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Something else is, have you noticed an increased risk for sex trafficking from those who have already been victimized? I mean, you shared that story with that boy who there's been three instances of
Hmm.
him kind of falling into the habit of victimization.
100%. Um, so yes, I'm going to answer your question first of all. The answer is yes. If you are more vulnerable, period, you're going to be victimized.
Mhm.
Okay. Being more vulnerable, it makes you more susceptible to predators, because you are more likely to like tolerate a predator, but being vulnerable is very layered. I'm going to give you like three common examples of what it looks like. So, one way it could be like if you're vulnerable, you feel powerless. Okay. So, when you're powerless, you don't have that authority to stand up for yourself, to get out of situations. That's one way vulnerability can be preyed on by a predator. Another way is when you're vulnerable and you just want to be loved. You just want to be loved. And that can turn into a Romeo pimp situation, which is when a sex trafficker acts like your boyfriend or your girlfriend,
Yeah.
but we call that a Romeo pimp. And so they act like they're your boyfriend or girlfriend. So you're fooled into staying in this relationship, and then they sex traffic you right under your nose and you don't even know it.
Mhm.
Another vulnerability would be maybe you have past trauma. So you have sort of the spirit of shame that is heavy on you. And when you are living in shame, you just feel all kinds of things like you're not good enough, you can't come out of this. And something we talk we don't talk about this in our presentations, but after our presentation, we offer for anybody to come to a separate room and meet with our team. In that room, we have a lot of people say, I'm so full of shame, or I feel guilty because something you said in the presentation, I didn't do that. Like I saw a kid and now I know they were being trafficked, and at the time I didn't know what to do and now I'm so full of shame about it. Well, we are really clear about the difference between guilt and shame
Yeah.
because this is really important with vulnerable people especially. Guilt is good. Guilt is okay because guilt makes you change. It makes you, okay, I made a bad choice. I feel kind of guilty. I'm going to turn that around.
Hmm.
That's fine. Shame is when, to me, shame is from the enemy, where it like it weighs on you and you can never get out and you dwell and it's so to me, it's
Yeah.
like guilt times 100. So that's something that's important. So
Yeah.
vulnerability is major.
Wow. It's multifaceted, and
It
I'm
is.
sure there are certain people who are more vulnerable than others.
Yes.
Thinking even within my own relationships, I feel like younger
Mhm.
children obviously are more vulnerable. They don't
Mhm.
know much of the world.
Yeah.
I My youngest cousins don't have phones. My two youngest cousins.
Mhm.
And they have gotten to hissy fits about it, especially the younger
Sure.
girl, because she is now like, I think she's in sixth or seventh grade.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of her siblings had phones by that point. Even if it was just like a flip phone, like they had something.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
all of her friends have a phone. But her parents were like, no, we messed up with the first four, but with the last two, we are keeping you safe from this. And it
Good.
has been something where she doesn't understand. but everybody else in the family, everybody else who's older, everyone else who's grown up online has
Hmm.
some semblance of, oh, they are really protecting you
Yeah.
because you are vulnerable. Like
Hmm.
she already has a TikTok account. She uses on her mom's account. She has Roblox. Like she has all these things
Hmm.
where
Oh,
things can happen from that.
yes. Yes. So lots of kids have been groomed off Roblox. So that's a big one. You might want to tell them that, like, I'd rather they not have ever have phones until they're adults,
Yeah.
but should they get to a desperate position where they need it for safety or whatever, the Gab phone, GABB phone, and the
Mhm.
Bark phone are phones sort of built to protect kids from danger. So we have them on our website. We don't sponsor them or anything like that. We literally exist to keep children safe and youth and people safe. And so we just put that information on our website.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
But
Thanks.
since we've talked about how people who have been victimized, like it's common for them to repeatedly victimize.
Mhm.
Um, how does childhood trauma impact a
Mhm.
victim's ability to seek help or escape from trafficking situations later in life? Have you noticed anything where there's kind of been a mental block?
100%. But I do think it goes back to the vulnerability examples I gave you. So, because there's so many different layers to trauma and whatnot, the one thing that people who've been through trauma have in common is vulnerability. So, it might show in different ways. It might show, as I mentioned, powerless. It might show in shame. It might show that you're desperate for love or whatever. So, that's, I guess, the one commonality that people who have been through trauma. Also, predators, they can see that a mile away. If you're someone who's experienced trauma, sadly, it's easy to identify to a predator. They can see the hurt, they can see the pain, the shame, they can see all the ugliness that's kind of like weighing on you from that past trauma, and they will use it to manipulate and yeah, just manipulate and be predatorial. It's so it to me it boils down to vulnerability from your traumas. Yeah.
It's it's crazy how it's all so connected.
I know. I
It's
know.
just
Yeah. It's
you need
wild.
healing to move forward. You need
Hmm.
to experience healing, experience freedom in Jesus Christ,
Yep.
and to be able to move forward from that shame, because that shame of your past experience will keep you silent and keep
Yeah.
you constantly turning over in your head about why you're the worst, why
Right.
it's your fault, even if you have an understanding that
Hmm.
no, I it wasn't my fault. there's there's that block, and you see that so
There's a block.
often with
Yeah.
people who have been victimized, whether it be sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse.
Hmm. Right. There's also a comfortableness. I will say that too. Some people start to, they know nothing else. So being in that shame-filled life or that space, it's all they know. So it becomes comfortable to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
um what are some prevention tactics that you have to keep children from harm?
Okay. Number one is education. So to me, parent or guardian, whomever they live with, need to have open and safe discussions and have them all the time. They need to prep them, role play with them, teach them scenarios about what's out in the world and how to get out of a bad situation. They need to they need to educate them and let them know reality gracefully. So reality gracefully is yes, anybody can be a predator. Your friend can, my brother can, grandpa, grandma, they can be predators. Your teacher, your coach, your doctors. It's a fact. So we have to be able to know the signs. And if parents are continually sort of gracefully educating their kids depending on the age, and they have to start young because we live in a dark broken world, and they need to know, a lot of parents want to shelter and and prevent them from knowing what's truly out there. But there is a way to do it where you're not sharing inappropriate stuff with them, but you are sharing the truth with them. So, education, role play, be completely transparent, be real, um, keep the conversation going, and then teach them that they have a voice. Teach them how to use their own authority so that ever put in an uncomfortable situation, they are confident enough to speak up and say, I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable right now. Okay, I'm gonna bye, click, block, or if they're in person, I'm uncomfortable, walk away. There is so much to authority when you teach a child. And of course, if they're a Christian, I mean, if they could learn about their identity being in Christ, that would be number one. But the whole world doesn't have that promise and whatnot. And so for those kids that aren't in a family situation like that or don't have that opportunity, in the very least, you have to be teaching them authority and how to stand up for themselves and get out of uncomfortable situations. So that's number one. Number two would be don't allow screens. um,
Yep.
don't allow smartphones. They are the devil. When it comes to a young, impressionable mind, there's just too much danger to be done. And
Yeah.
every single person, if they have a screen, they've talked to a predator, and they just didn't know it.
That's
So social media, remove the no social media. A lot of, and then have safeguards. You can have
mhm,
safeguards like Custodial is a parental control app. However, you can't just be dependent that that app is going to protect your kid from everything. You
mhm,
have to do the work. You have to check the app. You have to continue educating. You have to be involved in their life and letting them know, come talk to me if anything is weird. And you have to be able to set your space up so that your kid actually trusts you and will actually do that. If they don't do it with you, then you need to provide safe people that they can do it with. Okay, you don't like talking to mom? Fine. How do you feel about Aunt Joni? What about your youth pastor? Do you feel comfortable with your youth pastor and his wife? We want to, if they don't feel comfortable with mom and dad, let's at least provide safe adults that they can talk to. And then just parents educating themselves about what is going on out there. Um, there's all kinds of information online.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean, it's no
those.
longer the 80s and the 90s. It's 8 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? The
Yeah.
light posts come on. Like, it's not just
Mm-mm.
that culture. It's so
Right.
much more, as I mentioned earlier, it's like we're all digital neighbors. Like the world is so much closer.
Yeah.
I've discussed this with people before where I feel like the burden of the internet is so big.
Mhm.
Like there is things that we know about happening around the world that we were never meant to know.
Exactly.
Like yes, we need to stay updated on
Mhm.
events, but whenever you hear about shootings in Thailand at schools, like that burdens, like that is not something that we can carry the burden of the whole world.
Right.
And being exposed to people all over the world,
Mhm.
so wildly dangerous. You
It is.
mentioned earlier that everybody has talked to a predator online. Every child has talked to a predator
Mhm.
online and just didn't know it. That kind of reminded me of something from my own childhood. My
Mhm.
parents were not very well aware of social media when it came out
Sure.
because
Yeah.
it had just come out. Like it
Yeah.
was brand new.
Yeah.
It was a brand new
Yeah.
piece. They
Yeah.
knew about Facebook and they thought it wasn't gonna last. So
Yeah.
I was in either second or third grade when Instagram came out. I
Mhm.
very immediately got an account. It was
Oh,
on my
wow.
dad's
Okay.
iPad. So where he preached his sermons from, I had my
Okay.
little Instagram account.
Yeah.
But because of that, I have been very comfortable online.
Mhm.
Like I've grown up on YouTube, I've grown up on Instagram. I grew
Mhm.
up on Musically before it was TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've had experience posting and engaging with
Mhm.
strangers.
Mhm.
And when I was in sixth grade, I think, oh my gosh, what year was that? actually, I don't want to know, but probably close to 2016.
Yeah.
It was kind of the age of like the lifestyle blogger and YouTuber.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I want to be that. I want to
Mhm.
get all those cool little packages. Like,
Yes.
so my parents let me make a little public account and I posted stuff.
Mhm.
I have never been messaged by so many people
Mhm.
than I was when I was 12 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
12 years old, I was getting
Mhm.
messages.
Yeah.
I am now 20. I do
Yeah.
not get messages anymore. I'm like,
Good.
I am now a normal age and I do not have 25-year-olds in my DMs. But when I was
Good.
12, they were
Mhm.
there. I blocked
Yeah.
them, but it
Good.
was a regular occurrence where I would
Mhm.
post whatever and I
Yeah.
would get a DM within the next 2 days.
Yeah. So on my website, on the homepage, if you my website is pursuit3416.org. But if you go on it and you scroll down, you can watch a short video that shows how fast when a childhood profile is created, how fast predators react. And I think it's I don't know, under 7 minutes or something like that. Um, so you just get to watch the whole thing. So I highly recommend you watch the
I
video.
will.
And we have something else cool on the homepage as well, is we have a sextortion experience. And sextortion falls under sexual exploitation,
Mhm.
and people are trafficked from it. But it's when you're extorted for nudes or nude videos. You're extorted for either money or more nudes and videos. And it's so prominent right now that about 5 and 17 kids have experienced it.
Oh,
Five
wow.
and 17 kids have experienced some form of sextortion, which makes sense when you think about that stat I gave you with Gen Z, and
With Snapchat.
65% have had
Yeah.
nudes and whatnot. Um, but a sextortion experience, we have it, it's 7 minutes long and it's really cool. It's interactive, and it gives you the opportunity to feel what a kid goes through when they're being sextorted. So, since it's a part of sexual exploitation and it leads to sex trafficking, sometimes I would encourage you to do the sextortion experience.
I will 100% do that.
Yeah, yeah, very
Um,
good.
my final question I have
Mhm.
is what are some challenges you face daily in this line of work?
So many. Um, number one would be the unbelief. So people still think it's an international problem, sex trafficking. Um, it's a $236 billion industry, and America is responsible for 2/3 of that.
Oh,
So if you do the math, and it's 236 billion, and we're responsible for 2/3, that should be a huge wake-up call to people that we have a human trafficking problem in this world. Um, so that's number one, is the unbelief. And number two is going to be the denial. So I can't tell you how many experiences we've had as a team where we do a presentation. And when we do a presentation, we give loads of local examples where kids were groomed and sex trafficked or sextorted. We give tons. And we'll literally say, at Fort Sumwall South, this happened. At Chesterfield High, this happened. We'll literally tell you where it happened. And people will come up to us afterwards and go, "Is that for real?"
oh,
And I'm like, "Well, I'm not up here for fun." They live in this denial, and that is hard. That's a huge challenge. The
yeah.
getting people to accept this information that's of what is truly happening in every neighborhood in America, that's a tough one. I had a man come up to me after I did a presentation, and he said, I just Googled those stories that you shared, and they're not on here. So did they really happen? And I said, okay, let me remind you that these are private stories that the
Yeah.
kids that I've worked with for 9 years, I'm sharing their stories anonymously, not sharing their names and whatnot.
Mhm.
It's not going to be on Google.
Yeah.
And then I also, during a presentation, I educate on the fact that not everything makes the news.
Mhm.
A lot of sex trafficking and sextortion and whatnot happens in families, and families don't talk about it.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
bury it. They just try to go get the kid therapy and deal with it that way. Um, it's not put on the news. The stuff that makes the news is more like big sex trafficking rings getting busted and hotel sex trafficking rings getting busted.
Mhm.
But that's not what sex trafficking looks like in our everyday neighborhood. It
Yeah.
looks like a kid, like a girl I mentored, 15 years old, fell in love with a boy online, Romeo pimp. They started dating in person. He convinced her that they needed to make money fast, sell her body. She did. She loved him. She'd do anything for him. And he sex trafficked her in her house when her parents went to work.
Oh.
They'd go to work. He'd bring in the buyers. They would sexually abuse her all day. And then he'd get them out before parents came home. This girl, 15, had dinner with her parents every night after being sexually abused all day for months and months. And the parents didn't have a clue. That is what sex trafficking looks like in our neighborhoods.
That is.
You're not, yes, you're not tied to a bed in a basement. You are willingly
Mhm.
sex trafficked, but you don't know it because predators don't say, hey, I'm grooming you. Hey, I'm courting you. I'm seasoning you. And now I'm going to sex traffic you. They just are Romeo pimps sometimes, and you'll do anything they say, or all kinds of other scenarios, but that's what sex trafficking looks like in our area. So denial, unbelief. Another challenge is just educating parents that they are not their kid's friend. They have control of their phone, so use it. Take their phone, review their phone, look at every messaging app you can possibly come across. Um, just that local churches, another challenge would be sometimes randomly we speak to a lot of churches and randomly we'll have a church say, oh, we're good because we have sheltered kids here, and we don't have to worry about that, and it doesn't matter. We will meet with them and we'll share local stories, and they don't want to they don't want to hear it. They want to keep their eyes closed to the reality of what's happening in their neighborhood.
Wow.
And then probably lastly would just be even getting support for a nonprofit like ours.
Mhm.
We're solely about educating and protecting kids, but again, it's not like a tangible thing. We're just coming in to speak, so sometimes that can be very difficult too. Yeah.
Yeah, that is what gets me is number one, like the number that this is no longer just an international issue. Because
Hmm.
growing up, anytime you hear about sex trafficking, it's
Yeah.
always in Thailand, in
Yes.
China. It's always in East Asia, like in Southeast
Right.
Asia. Like that
Right.
is where they're like, this is where sex
Hot.
trafficking happens. This is where
Yeah.
sex tourism
Yeah.
is. In Denmark with the red light district or Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you don't often hear of cases happening in the United States, and
Yeah.
when you do, it's very much like, oh, it was the uncle. It
Hmm.
was, which
Yeah.
is common, but
Very common.
it's not the what something
The the
billion
senior
dollar.
in high school.
Yeah. It's
Well,
never the senior in high school. Like it's like honestly, like I believe it,
mhm,
but it's
mhm. It's hard. It's shocking.
it's shocking.
Yeah. Let me tell you about a senior in high school at a St. Louis high school. She was 17 years old and she sex trafficked her peers through either convincing them or threatening them to sell their body. She made $30,000 a month and she was the salutatorian of her high school. St. Louis, 17, a senior girl was a sex trafficker. This is common. There's a similar girl in California that did the same thing. So again, unbelievable. And that story can't get to the news. She's a minor. I know about it because I'm in numerous coalitions and task force. So I can share that story anonymously, but that's not on the news. So, yes, seniors, little teenage girls are sex traffickers.
Oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
that's that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I just like,
Yeah.
is it? No, no, it's not. I hope it's not common to see that. But in those
hmm
cases,
hmm
is it common that they were victimized themselves? Like,
Sometimes you do see that is a pattern. That's more of a pattern when you come across like adult women that are sex traffickers, they were usually trafficked themselves
mhm,
when they were younger, and they see the profitability in it, and then they age out and they become sex traffickers themselves. That's very common. In this situation, no, she needed money for college, and she was the first one that made it into college. So she came up with a business opportunity. Yeah,
like,
sometimes it's like, to me, that's when, where is the empathy? Where is the compassion?
that's just
What you're,
evil.
yeah, it's evil.
It's just
Exactly.
evil.
Yeah, right. Another reason why it's so imperative in my eyes is to have a relationship with Jesus
Hmm.
and identify with him, because you're far less likely to go, oh, I feel okay using all these children to make me money. You have empathy, you have compassion, and you're less likely to make crazy choices like that.
Yeah. Wow. I
Mhm.
honestly would love to talk with you about this for hours, but we
Yeah,
have
yeah. I got to get you
wonderful.
back. Glad to do it. Bye.
So, bye. Have a lovely day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.